Imagine you're looking at a pharmaceutical company right now, and they're using like this incredibly advanced AI to discover a true miracle molecule.
And they do it in record time, right?
Exactly. They shave years off the traditional discovery phase. It's this breathtaking breakthrough.
But then reality hits.
Yeah, reality hits hard. It takes them the better part of a decade just to figure out how to actually manufacture the thing.
All the fluid dynamics, the crystallization, the logistics.
Right, all of it. Now imagine the complete flip side of that.
Okay, I'm with you.
You've got this fully robotic factory. It's totally lights out,
Yeah.
humming along with perfect mathematical efficiency.
But it's siloed.
Completely. It is totally disconnected from the scientists' research data.
Right.
So if they need to tweak a formulation suddenly, it has zero agility to adapt.
You know, the irony here is that if you actually work in pharma, neither of those scenarios sounds like science fiction.
No.
Not at all. I mean, that sounds like a Tuesday. Historically, that structural disconnect is the defining bottleneck of the whole field.
You've got the brilliant research in one silo and the physical manufacturing in another.
Exactly. And there's this massive chasm in between where billions of dollars and, well, years of potential patient outcomes are just lost to friction.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to figure out how the pharmaceutical industry is actually trying to bridge that gap.
We want to see how they're connecting digital scientific discovery directly to physical drug production.
Yeah, and we are working with a really fascinating stack of sources today. It's all centered around Volume 5 of the Transforming Pharma book series.
Right, by Dr. Jayant Joshi and Umesh Naik.
That's the one. We've got a massive 98-page review of the book, a transcript from a podcast discussing its core themes, and even the book's cover art.
Which is actually really detailed. It features this whole Pharma 4.0 dashboard.
It does, and we are definitely going to dig into those numbers later.
Okay.
Let's unpack this. We hear terms like Pharma 4.0 all the time in trade journals.
Oh, constantly. It's the buzzword of the decade.
Right. But reading through these sources, they aren't just talking about buying a few smart sensors, are they?
No, they're arguing for something way more structural. The overarching goal of Pharma 4.0 is to create this singular, connected learning system.
So linking the lab and the factory.
Exactly. Bridging Lab 4.0, which is all the research, with Factory 4.0, so medicines are discovered faster, manufactured intelligently, and delivered sustainably.
Without messing with patient safety.
Absolutely. Safety and compliance are non-negotiable.
So to understand how a drug gets made now, we really have to start where it's born, right? In the lab.
Yeah, the digital R&D phase, that's the first major challenge they cover.
And the sources list all the things AI is doing right now. It's target identification, virtual screening, molecular design.
Predicting absorption, toxicity, all of it.
It's a huge list.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like AI is doing all the heavy lifting. But isn't AI in drug discovery essentially just like a high-powered GPS?
How do you mean?
Like, it can plot the absolute fastest route to a new drug. But you still need a human driver to actually navigate the physical road, right?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that analogy. The authors really emphasize the why here. An algorithm just cannot replace scientific judgment.
Because it doesn't actually understand chemistry,
Yeah.
it just understands data patterns.
Right. The strongest model isn't AI working all by itself in some dark room. It's AI working alongside medicinal chemists, toxicologists, clinical experts.
It's a tool, not a replacement.
Exactly. And that tool desperately needs high-quality data. It needs validated models, explainability, and, strict bias control.
Because if the AI learns from biased or messy data, it's just going to confidently give you the wrong answer faster.
Yeah, a tiny statistical glitch could mean a failed clinical trial down the road.
Which brings us to the clinical trials themselves. The sources talk a lot about virtual trials and digital biomarkers.
Like using smartphones and wearables to track patients.
Yeah, continuous heart rate, sleep patterns, that kind of thing. Instead of making a patient come into a clinic once a month.
What's fascinating here is that the convenience factor cannot compromise the scientific validity.
Right, you can't just use consumer-grade smartwatch data and hand it to the FDA.
No, absolutely not. The standards don't drop just because the tech is easier to use. But there's also a huge inclusion aspect to this.
It's like reaching patients who normally couldn't participate.
Yes. A virtual trial using telemedicine should improve inclusion, but the authors caution that it should never introduce a new digital barrier.
Oh, I see. Like if a patient doesn't have high-speed internet or the latest smartphone.
Exactly. If they lack the tech access, you might accidentally exclude an entire demographic, which completely skews your trial data.
Wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The tech has to broaden the net, not shrink it.
Precisely.
So, shifting gears slightly, the sources also talk about computational biology and how it relies on sharing massive amounts of data.
Right, sharing multi-omics data across different academic and corporate labs.
And they use these FAIR principles, right? Findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable.
Yes, that's the standard for data sharing now.
But this got me thinking. If data is just freely shared across all these internal labs and external tech partners,
Yeah.
who actually owns the intellectual property when an AI makes a massive discovery based on that shared pool?
That is such a crucial point. And the authors point out that this is exactly why digital R&D requires modern IT management from day one.
So you can't wait until you find the cure to figure out who owns it?
No, that's a recipe for a massive lawsuit.
Yeah.
Regulatory strategy isn't just some final administrative step you do at the end anymore.
It has to be built in.
Yeah, the book calls it innovation by design. You have to engineer the legal and regulatory framework at the same time you're engineering the molecule.
Okay, so let's say we've designed this brilliant drug.
Right.
We've done the virtual trials. We've secured the IP.
The hard part's over. Right.
Right, but an algorithm can't actually cure a patient until it's physically manufactured in the real world.
We have to move from the digital lab to the physical factory.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that book cover, the Pharma 4.0 dashboard.
The metrics on there are wild.
They really are. It shows a predictive maintenance health score of 96% with low risk. Process efficiency is at 98.6%.
And the OEE, the overall equipment effectiveness, is running at 92.4%.
Which is just staggering for a pharma plant. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about slapping some Wi-Fi sensors on old metal vats.
No, not at all. To hit those numbers, they're talking about a fundamental shift in how the material moves.
From batch processing to continuous manufacturing, right?
Yes. Traditional pharma relies on disconnected batch processing. You make a bunch of material, put it in a holding vat, test it, wait, and move it to the next machine.
Very stop and go.
Exactly. Continuous manufacturing means the material flows nonstop without those long holding periods.
So shorter cycles and a way smaller physical footprint in the factory.
Huge benefits. But it demands incredibly deep process understanding. You need to be able to monitor the chemical composition in real time and divert bad materials instantly.
If one sensor flags a tiny impurity, you just divert that specific flow. You don't throw away the whole batch.
Right. It never stops.
And to manage all that complexity, they use digital twins, which, reading about it, sounds like playing a high-stakes video game simulation of the factory.
That is a great way to put it. It's a real-time, physics-based digital replica of the physical manufacturing line.
So you want to know what happens if you tweak a fluid process or change the temperature.
You don't mess with the physical line.
Right. You do it in the simulation first, so you don't accidentally ruin millions of dollars of real-world medicine.
Exactly. You test extreme scenarios in the digital twin.
I want to go back to that dashboard's predictive maintenance metric, though.
Yeah.
The 96%.
Okay, yeah. Using sensors to predict when a machine is going to fail before it actually does.
Right, like monitoring vibration and temperature. But in a strictly regulated FDA environment like pharma, software can't just silently fix things behind the scenes, can it?
Oh no, that is the huge regulatory catch here. Software cannot act like a rogue agent.
It needs a paper trail.
More than a paper trail. Any algorithmic recommendation has to be deeply integrated with calibration, change control, and quality risk processes.
So if the AI says, hey, this bearing is going to fail in 3 days, it has to trigger a whole auditable workflow.
Precisely. It must be a controlled, completely accountable action.
It changes the whole concept of quality control.
It really does. Real-time quality monitoring shifts the paradigm from retrospective inspection, where you just test the final pill, to active process assurance.
You're proving it's safe every millisecond it's being made.
Exactly.
But okay, having a digital lab and a simulated factory is great in theory.
In theory, sure.
But introducing all of this crazy advanced technology to a real-world workforce,
Yeah.
I mean, that usually just results in pure chaos.
Oh, absolute operational chaos. It's the hardest part of the transformation.
How do these legacy organizations actually survive this? Before we get to the roadmap, there's one more detail on that cover dashboard I have to point out.
What's that?
Energy usage optimized by minus 18%.
Ah, yes, the sustainability aspect.
Yeah. The book makes it clear that sustainability metrics like energy, water, waste, carbon per batch, they have to be on daily operational dashboards.
They can't just be stuffed into some glossy annual ESG report to keep investors happy.
Right. It has to be a daily operational reality.
Because if you're optimizing your factory with digital twins, you naturally waste less material and burn less energy. It's built-in sustainability.
So true. But getting back to the chaos of adopting this tech,
Mm.
when I read about blockchain, extended reality, quantum computing for pharma,
It's a lot of buzzwords.
yeah, are these companies just suffering from shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
rushing to buy tech they don't actually need?
Well, this raises an important question. The right question for leadership isn't how quickly can we adopt quantum computing?
What should they be asking?
They should ask, what specific problem does this solve, and can we actually operate it responsibly at scale?
Right, like, do we even have the infrastructure for this?
Exactly. And the book uses a very strict people-process technology framework to guide this. They actually lay out a 5-stage practical transformation roadmap.
Let's run through those 5 stages for the listener, because it's a great reality check. Stage 1 isn't buying hardware, is it?
Nope. Stage 1 is to define your outcomes first. Patient, scientific, and business outcomes.
Figure out what you're actually trying to achieve.
Right. Then stage 2 is establishing foundations.
Which means governed data and cybersecurity.
Yes. You have to clean up your data swamps before you apply AI to them.
Okay, so stage 1 is outcomes. Stage 2 is foundations. What's stage 3?
Stage 3 is to pilot use cases, but in very controlled environments.
So you don't just roll it out globally on day 1. You prove it works first.
Exactly. Then stage 4 is where you integrate those successful pilots across R&D and manufacturing.
Which I imagine is where a lot of projects die.
Oh, it's the valley of death for new tech. Trying to get legacy systems to talk to new pilots is incredibly hard.
And finally, stage 5.
Stage 5 is to scale with continuous measurement.
Meaning monitoring yields and R&D cycle times.
Yes, but also monitoring workforce adoption. Are your people actually using the new tools?
Because if they hate it, the whole thing fails.
Exactly. Whether you are in pharma or just managing a small team in another industry, the lesson is universal. Technology without skilled people won't be adopted.
They'll just find workarounds.
Right. And skilled people with fragmented, broken processes can't scale their work.
And efficient processes with unreliable tech won't be trusted.
You nailed it. All 3 people, process and technology, they have to advance together.
That really brings it all together. So summarizing what we've learned from Volume 5 of Transforming Pharma, it basically proves that Pharma 4.0 is not merely a smart lab, and it's not just a robotic factory. It is an entirely connected learning system from the initial scientific hypothesis all the way to commercial manufacturing.
It's a continuous loop of data and physical reality.
Exactly. So for you listening to this, I want you to consider your own industry or organization. Which capability do you think they should prioritize first?
It's a tough choice.
It really is. Do you start with AI discovery, building out digital twins, or maybe focusing on sustainable operations? Understanding this shift is just so vital.
Because it literally dictates how quickly and safely the next life-saving treatments are going to reach our own medicine cabinets.
It affects all of us. And I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
It wasn't explicitly covered in the text, but it's completely inspired by them.
Yeah.
If AI eventually manages to fully link patient health data in real time, straight from your wearable device,
Right.
straight into continuous, flexible manufacturing lines, will we reach a point where medicines are no longer mass-produced at all? Right. What if they are custom manufactured on demand for your specific biology within hours of a diagnosis?
A personalized, continuous microfactory. That is the logical conclusion of all this tech.
It really is. I'd love for you to ponder that future. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.